So it's been a really long time since I sat down to film a video. I have been really dreading making this video, if I'm honest, and talking about what happened. Not just because it's so painful and it's so hard to talk about, but also because I finally feel like I'm at a place where I feel somewhat okay, somewhat normal, and I know that talking about it and kind of reliving it is obviously going to take me back to all those raw, fresh feelings of pain and sadness and everything that I felt when it first happened. If you found my video because you've maybe typed in loss or grief or pain or anything like that, death, losing a loved one, I hope and I pray that you can get something out of this, something that will hopefully strengthen you or comfort you or encourage you and just let you know that you're not alone. When things first happened, what is YouTube? Like, I didn't care about anything like that. I'm not going to talk about it in any detail whatsoever. Only my friends and family need to know what happened, but as time's gone on, I've just felt like God wants me to share what happened and just talk about what happened. And I feel like there's power in vulnerability. And something that I've heard a lot during this time is that, Samira, you are so strong, you're so strong. Like, I can't believe what you've been through. I can't believe you're still standing, you're still speaking, you're still sane. You're so, so strong. And I do think I'm strong, and I do think that I have handled things well by the grace of God. But I am not afraid to admit that I have been broken. I've got my tissues at the ready because I know that this is going to be so, so difficult. So I've taken my time. I mean, it's taken me, what, 7 months to get my thoughts together and to even talk about it. But I wasn't going to allow anybody to rush me, or, you know, I'm not sharing this because I feel I have to, but I want to, you know. I couldn't just come back on here and just pretend that what happened in my life didn't happen, because as sad and as painful and as traumatic as it is, it's reality, you know. It is what happened to me, and sadly it's what happens to a lot of people every day. And when you lose somebody that you love, it changes you forever. It changes you forever, and your whole perspective on life changes, and your outlook and things that are important become so clear. But yeah, I feel like it's important to share your mountain moments as well as your valley moments. It's important to share the ups as well as the downs, and especially as a Christian, I just feel like I have to talk about what happened, because God is just, God is so good. God is so good. And he's taught me so much, and in this time, yeah, he's taught me so much. And I feel like there's just a purpose for all of this pain. There's certain things in life that you just, there's no way you just go through it just to go through it and just to feel pain and just to feel sad and just to cry and just to mourn. Like, God doesn't do things for no reason. And I know that everything I've been through and I'm still going through there is going to be a victory. There is going to be something great that comes out of it, and I just want to be in my right place and allow God to use me for whatever it is that he wants to use me for. And if that is just to help one person out there, then honestly I'm happy. They say losing a child or losing a parent is like the hardest thing that you could go through. So to lose them both at once, there is nothing in this world that can prepare you for that level of trauma, that level of pain. I'm really trying because I don't want this video to just be so, you know, so teary, so sad, but obviously it's gonna happen. But bear with me. If this video is very choppy, just bear with me. I just want to start off by saying that I'm so thankful for every single message, every phone call, every comment, every DM, every bunch of flowers that I was sent, every prayer. The prayers, that has honestly been what has got me through. Like, my family have been through a lot. My family's been through a lot this year. We lost the oldest person in our family as well as the youngest person in our family. And yeah, it's just been a lot. I'm gonna talk about what happened with my son because it happened to me, and I want to kind of raise awareness about what happened to me because it was just so sudden and so unexpected. And you know, like I said, it does happen to women all the time, but obviously until it happens to you, you just never really think about those sort of things. I'm not going to talk about what happened with my dad with any detail, just out of privacy to him and my family, and I just don't want to. We were expecting our baby boy this year. He was healthy, he was growing well. Initially there were a few things that they were a bit concerned about in my pregnancy, but as my pregnancy progressed, things got better and it was fine. Like, it was a completely healthy pregnancy. And the last scan that I had, he was perfect, he was growing well, and there was just nothing for me to be worried about. When I got to my 7th month of pregnancy, we were so excited to be having him. If you've watched my previous videos, you will know, like, we announced it to the kids, they were excited. We had a gender reveal, and you know, we announced our pregnancy. We had this beautiful photo shoot at our house, and I'm so happy we did all those things because, like, you know, there's people that might think that, you know, the fact that I shared my pregnancy publicly was, you know, maybe why this even happened, or why, you know, I'm now having to sit here and explain what happened. But I don't feel like that. I actually feel the opposite. I feel like I don't regret it. I'm so glad that I did that because I have pictures to look back on. I have those real emotions, and those raw emotions that I captured on camera when we were excited that it was a boy, and all of that is there, and I'm really, really happy I did that. Of course, you know, when you put something out there like that, people are going to expect a, you know, a what happened, a kind of an update. But I'm not doing this because I feel obligated to share it. I just feel like I want to, you know. But yeah, so in terms of what happened, it was a normal day. I was at home, I woke up, and I had just turned 29 weeks that day, and it was the 30th of January. It was a Thursday morning, and like I said, I was at home, and I was actually on the phone to a friend of mine, and I just remember we were talking, and I just got this, like, a sharp pain, in my stomach. And I remember just thinking, whoa, what was that? But I think I just thought it was just, you know, like when you're pregnant, you might get a sharp pain or a twinge or whatever. So I don't think, although it was really intense and it hurt, I didn't really think much of it. I just said it to my friend. I said, oh, like, I just got this really sharp pain. And she said, oh, maybe just get a cup of water and sit down. You know, it's probably just, you know, pregnancy pain. So I just remember going to the living room and sitting down, and we carried on talking, and then that pain came again, and that time it kind of like took my breath away. And I just remember saying to her that, nah, something's not right. Like, obviously I've had children before, I know what contractions feel like, I know what pregnancy pains feel like, and this was a pain that I had never felt before. I can't even really explain it, but it felt like I was suffocating inside. I just thought, you know, although it's painful, although it's intense, it'll probably calm down after a while. So I came off the phone and I got up, and I just remember walking to the kitchen because I wanted to have some water and just, you know, focus on my breathing, have some water, and just hopefully the pain would subside. And the next thing I remember, I just remember waking up by the front door. I was on the floor, I had bust my lip was bleeding. So at first I just didn't understand where the blood was coming from. But I felt my lip was bleeding, my stomach was hurting, my knee was hurting, my head was hurting, so I knew that I had fell. And I just thought I had just collapsed. I thought maybe I've just fainted because I got too hot or whatever. But I didn't realise at the time that what had actually happened was when I fell and I hit my stomach, my head, my leg, but I also had a seizure. And I've never had a seizure before. I've never collapsed like that before in life in general and in any of my pregnancies. So I was just so confused. I just didn't understand what was happening to me. And there was still that intense pain in my stomach. And I just remember being on the floor. I was at home alone. The kids were at school, Morgan was at work, and I just remember laying there thinking, God help me. I couldn't find my phone, and as much as I was in so much pain, I knew that if I didn't try and find my phone, that I can't call Morgan, I can't call the ambulance, I can't let anybody know what's happening. So anyway, I crawled to the front room, and I somehow managed to find my phone. It must have been God, because how delirious and confused I was, I don't know how I found it. It had fallen in the crack of the sofa. Called Morgan straight away, and I just said, oh babe, like, I don't know what's happening to me, but I'm in a lot of pain and it's not going. And I can only imagine the panic that he felt at that time. But he said, okay babe, I'm gonna come right now, I'm gonna call the ambulance. And I was like, oh no babe, you know, just, I don't think we need an ambulance, just come home. I'm just gonna lay here on the sofa and just rest, and I'll wait for you to come home. Like, I have a really high pain threshold, so I was thinking, oh, I'll just firm it, I'll just wait, let me not be dramatic, it's probably nothing, everything's gonna be fine. But I really do thank God for Morgan and his intuition, and I think he just knew that like something's not right. I don't know if it was like how I was talking, or I just remember as we were talking I was losing my breath a little bit. So I think he was just like, nope, I'm not listening to you. So he left work straight away, he called the ambulance straight away, and it's so crazy to think about now, but I got up thinking, oh, let me, you know, I was in my nightdress, I was thinking, oh, let me just go and put something on and, like, you know, get somewhat ready, because I had a feeling that I was going to have to go to the hospital. And I got up and I had to quickly sit back down. At that moment is when I realised that, okay, this is not a joke. This is not something that I can just handle. Like, this is not a time to try and be strong. Something very serious, something very dangerous is happening to you right now, and you just need to listen to your body, sit down and be still. So I sat back down, and I remember thinking in that moment, like, I want to call my mum, I want to call my sister, I want to speak to the people in your life that, you know, if you're scared or if you're you know, feeling a way, you would normally speak to. But I just remember thinking, like, I don't want to worry my mum. Like, I know if I call my mum now, she's gonna start panicking. And I thought, Morgan knows, and that's the most important thing right now. And then my phone started ringing, and it was the ambulance. Obviously, because I was home alone, they wanted to speak to me and make sure that I wasn't going into labour. When you're 7 months pregnant, of course it's not good for you to go into labour, but if you do go to labour, there's so many cases where the baby survives. So 29 weeks, you know, he would have just been premature. Obviously he would have needed a lot of care and stuff, but yeah, like, I just wasn't thinking about death, you know, I just wasn't thinking that. That was my worst case scenario, that he's coming and he's going to be premature. So yeah, the ambulance called me. I was on the phone to them for maybe like 20 minutes. So I finally got a knock at the door, and they had sent the ambulance to come to my house. But obviously they just wanted to stay on the phone and make sure that I was still conscious whilst the ambulance got there. So the door rang, and oh my gosh, I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up, and I used every bit of strength I could get, and I just knew that if I didn't get up, it was my life and the baby's life that were at risk. And so I got up and I literally crawled, slithered to the door. I couldn't walk, I slithered to the door, and even to stand up to open the door, like, I was in so much pain that I just felt like I couldn't, but I knew that my life depended on it. So I got up, opened the door, and then I fell back down at the door, and I was so, like, I was in and out. I just felt like I was unconscious. It's hard to explain, but I just felt like I was there, but I wasn't there. So they came in, found me at the door, carried me back to the sofa, and not long after that Morgan came. So I just remember I was laying there, and then they kind of turned the question into him that, you know, does she normally have seizures? Does she normally black out? Because I started having more seizures whilst they were there. So I'm in and out, I'm like all over the place, I'm crying at this point, I'm just in this excruciating pain. The pain is getting more and more worse, and I'm just asking them, like, what is happening to me? What is happening to me? And again, they still thought I was in labour. So they were doing all these checks and stuff. They wanted to check my blood pressure, and for them to get a good reading of my pressure and everything, you obviously have to be in a certain position, but I couldn't physically stay in the position they wanted me to. So that bit was so long, and I know now that had we not have left the house, when we did leave the house, not only would the baby have died, but I would have died too. So Morgan came in the ambulance with me, and we got to the hospital, and as much as it was a bit of a blur, I do have quite vivid moments as well. I do remember quite clearly what was happening. They started to scan me, and I just remember laying there, and Morgan kept asking, is there a heartbeat? Is the baby okay? Is he okay? Is he okay? And there was this deafening silence, like, you know, when a doctor has some bad news and they don't know quite how to say it. So there was this silence, and the silence was so loud. The silence was so loud, and like I just knew. And they just looked at Morgan and said, that I'm really sorry. There's no heartbeat. Morgan obviously broke down straight away, and like, I didn't cry. I was so numb. I was in such disbelief. And I remember asking questions. I was saying things like, there's no way, look again, there's no way, like, such disbelief. And then I think they could tell that I wasn't really taking it all in, and so they took me to another room and they started breaking it down to me, and that is when it finally hit me that he's gone. So there's this lady that she took me, and she was just explaining that, you know, these things happen and it's very common, and there's not really a real reason for it, and it just happens sometimes. But basically what happened was I had a very sudden and a very aggressive preeclampsia. I've never had preeclampsia before in any of my pregnancies. I've never had high blood pressure, low blood pressure, anything like that. It was sudden, it was unexpected, and it's just one of those things that you can't really explain. They couldn't really explain it to me. There were no signs. I had a midwife appointment literally the week before, and there was nothing picked up. And even with that, it makes you feel like, well, did they really check properly? Maybe there's something that I could have done, but it's just one of those things, you know. There's nothing that I could have done to prevent it from happening. Basically what happens when you have preeclampsia is your blood pressure shoots up so high that it causes seizures and things like that. But what happened with me is that my blood pressure went so high that it caused an abruption. And an abruption is basically where your placenta detaches itself from your uterus. And obviously if your placenta isn't connected, then the baby loses its blood supply, oxygen, everything. And that's what happened. And my blood pressure then dropped so low that I almost died. And there was so much, basically the reason why there was no sign of labour or any bleeding or anything like that is because all the bleeding was going on internally. And I'm sorry that this is a bit graphic, but that's what nearly killed me. So basically, at the time they still didn't really know exactly what had happened. They knew that the baby had passed, and while she was talking to me and just explaining to me that, you know, I'm really sorry, and you know, we can provide whatever support we can for you, etc., that intense pain started coming back to me. So just as I was starting to believe the reality was sinking in, that is when the pain started again. So I didn't even have time to process the loss of my baby. The focus now became, I might die. So the pain started again, and I honestly did think I was gonna die. And obviously Morgan, poor Morgan, man, like he really went through it, like losing your baby and then having to deal with the reality that you could also lose your wife in the same moment. Like, when I think about what he went through, I'm just heartbroken for him as well. But everybody was just like rushed around us to support us. So my mum and my sister came to the hospital, and I remember like my sister and my mum walking in, and like just seeing them see me, like the look that they had on their faces, I just knew that it wasn't good. I knew that I could feel that they could see that I was on my way out. And I'll never forget that. There was one point where, because I was in such pain, they put me on gas and air, and I just remember my sister talking to them, asking them questions, what's happening, what's wrong with her. Obviously they were trying their best, but like I guess their best wasn't enough when you're literally watching your loved one about to potentially die. And I could just see that, yeah, she was just really, really scared. So I remember there was one point where my mum grabbed me, and you know when you get that mama talk, like she I just remember locking eyes with her, and she said, your life is important and Aiden and Mia need you. And I think she could sense that I was accepting that I was gonna die, and she needed me to fight. And like, a mother is irreplaceable, man. Like, I needed that, because I think I just, like I said, I think I just accepted that I was dying. And when she said that to me, I remember just like it just shocked me into like back into fight mode, and I think I started fighting for my life from that moment. And it's not that I wanted to die, of course not, but I just had no fight left. Like, just, you know, realizing that the baby was gone, and that I just felt so lost and in so much pain, and I couldn't really focus on anything. I was blacking out, I was in and out, and just seeing the pain on my sister's face, my mum's face, Morgan's face. When my sister was asking, like, you know, questions, they were just saying she's really, really unwell, she's really, really poorly. And they then said that I had to go into surgery, because even though the baby had passed, he was obviously still inside me. I hadn't gone into labour, so it's not like my body was contracting or doing anything to get him out. He was just inside me. And the pain was basically, I was hemorrhaging, and because he was still in there, because my placenta was in there but it was detached, all the bleeding was happening behind the placenta. So you can lose 1 litre of blood and die. I lost 2 litres of blood, and I had to have a blood transfusion, and they had to take me in for an emergency C-section. And at one point they said, they were talking, and obviously they have to read out what could go wrong, and they said, we may need to take her womb out. And I just remember my mum was saying, no, please don't take her womb out, don't take her womb out. And even I was like, please don't take my womb out. And they were like, if we have to take it out, we have to take it out. And of course, my well-being and my safety is more important than me having a womb. So that was what they said to me. And then they just rushed me into the theatre room, put the gas on me to kind of put me to sleep. And I just remember in that moment laying on the bed and just thinking, God, my life is literally in your hands. So the surgery took about 3 hours, and obviously for something that's an emergency, it shouldn't have taken long. And obviously that shows just how much work they had to do inside of me. And my mum, my sister and Morgan, like, I can't even imagine what they were thinking, what they were doing in those moments, and them not actually knowing if I was going to make it. But yeah, so I came out of theatre, and the lady that was with me, that was talking to me, the same woman, she sat with me throughout the whole time, and she came back to the room when they took me out of surgery, and she just looked at me and she said, Samira, there's someone up there watching over you, because it's a miracle that you're still alive. Oh man. Yeah, that's just what she kept saying, like, you were so poorly, you were so poorly. So she started giving me a bit of detail, which I won't go into, but what I will say is that there was so much bleeding that there was a blood clot that was bigger than the baby inside of me. And That's why they couldn't, medically, it just didn't make sense as to why I was still alive. And that's what makes me know that God has a plan, and I should have died and I could have died, but God said no. God still has a purpose for me, and as tragic as it is, I was comforted by that, the fact that I was so close to death and God saved me, for the sake of my family, like for the sake of Aiden and Mia and Morgan, and like they've been through enough. And you know, that was kind of like the only kind of comfort from that situation, the fact that I was still alive and I made it, and the surgery was a success, and I was out of theatre recovering. And one thing that I found so difficult is they put us in a room with another woman that had just had a baby, and I don't think it was the normal labour ward, because it just seemed like it was only her, that was the only baby that was there. But every single time I heard that baby cry, I just like, I don't think that was a good idea, and I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but just knowing that I'm a mother who's lost a baby, I don't think they should have put me in a room with someone who's had a baby. And you know, I just remember looking at her and thinking, you're so lucky to have your baby with you. So yeah, I was put on all these medicines, morphine, and I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink. It was a really hard night, and Morgan was there by my side. My mum and sister had to go, obviously they couldn't stay there, but Morgan is just the most amazing husband that I could have asked for in that time. He never left my side. He was just there with me, and obviously we were talking about things, and our main worry was Aiden and Mia, and you know, how are we going to tell them, what are we going to say? And by this time, obviously because I was in surgery, we hadn't seen the baby, and Morgan didn't want to see him without me being there, so we waited. And I came out of surgery at about 8 o'clock, so everything started in the day at around 11:30, 12. And you know, to think that from 11:30, 12 all the way up until like 5 o'clock I was hemorrhaging and I didn't die, and 3 hours later is when I came out of surgery, and all of that had gone on. And it's just literally a miracle. And even all the specialists that I spoke to, that's one thing they kept saying to me, that you're honestly so blessed, someone is watching over you. And obviously I know that's God. So the next morning was when we were obviously going to meet him, and I knew that he was no longer inside me, and I knew that, you know, he must be out, so he's somewhere. But it was almost a little bit surreal. And they took us into a room, and then they brought him in, and he was so perfect, fully formed, healthy, like he was perfect. He even looked like Aiden and Mia, and he just looked so peaceful. And to see a baby lifeless is just, it's trauma that I will carry forever. Like, to see your baby in your hands, not moving, not breathing, not able to look into its eyes or anything like that. But yeah, he was beautiful. He was amazing, and we had already named him. And I remember at one point when I was about 6 months pregnant, we were kind of umming and ahhing about the name still, and I had said to Morgan that, babe, like, because Morgan wasn't sure about the name Logan, and I said, babe, I can just feel it, like, this is Logan. I can't explain it, but his name is Logan. I can just feel it. And so when I looked at him, it was just so fitting, like, that was Logan. That's the baby that was kicking inside me. The night before he was born, on the 29th of January, I just remember that night he was kicking so much, and I just feel now, like, in hindsight, that that was probably his goodbye. And you know, I remember he was kicking so much that I got Aiden and Mia to come and feel my stomach, and they were just like, oh yeah, you know, they loved feeling him kick and stuff. But yeah, that was a nice moment. But I can't even explain the kind of pain that is for my body to have physically gone through all of that, and you know, the pain of a C-section, you know, what it does to you physically, and then emotionally have to also deal with the fact that you've lost your child is just unbelievably painful. And so we spent time with him anyway, and took pictures with him, and I just held him on my chest and I spoke to him, and we just spent time with him. And I was scared of what he was going to look like, you know, just in terms of maybe not being fully formed and things like that. But he was honestly so beautiful. Obviously I'm not going to share that because it's just too personal, but he just looked like a normal baby, like a normal baby. He weighed about 4 pounds, so there's babies that are born less than that and survive, so he definitely would have survived. And that's what was so painful, just feeling like my body is what killed him. Your body's first instinct, this is what the specialist was telling me, that when there's any sort of crisis during pregnancy, your body's first instinct is to save the mum and get rid of the baby. So, you know, that's what happened. But I just think it's important for women out there to know, not to scare pregnant women. I hope you're not scared by this, but it is something that can happen to anybody. You know, it's not something that I did, or it's not something that I was prepared for. It can happen to anybody, and I think it's just important to, like, whenever you feel something in your pregnancy, if there's something that you're not sure about or you're feeling uncomfortable with, you do what you feel is right. If you feel like you need to have an extra checkup, let them call you that extra first time mum. It doesn't matter, just as long as you have that peace of mind. And you know, initially I did feel a little bit like, oh, you know, maybe I could have done more, but I have learned to accept that if Logan was supposed to be here, he would be here. Like, God is that powerful. God is that miracle working God, that if Logan was supposed to be alive, he would be alive, and I strongly believe that. So obviously, because I had surgery, I was in hospital. I had to stay in hospital for a few days. So the next morning, after we met him, my mum and my sister came, and my close friends and my in-laws, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my brother, they all came to see us. And after that, the kids came, and we spoke to the kids and we explained it to them, and we were so scared that they weren't going to take it well. But you know, we just explained and said that Logan had gone to heaven and that we would see him one day. And oh, honestly, I'm so proud of Aiden and Mia. They've been so strong, and they've been my strength, you know. They took it so well. So after we told them, they were still happy-go-lucky, and you know, they were still fine, because we didn't want to make it seem too daunting. As much as we wanted to share the reality, we didn't want it to be, you know, this big depressing news. So Morgan kind of said it casually that, you know, yeah, so you know, Mummy had the baby in her belly, well, he's gone to be with Jesus. So yeah, that was that. And then the following morning, I was still in hospital, like I hadn't even been discharged yet, and then I found out that my dad passed away. And I literally screamed down the room. Like, all the nurses and stuff started rushing in because I screamed. Like, I just refused to believe it, and so hard to grasp the fact that he passed. Like, it was so hard to deal with because we just didn't think that was going to happen. I don't really know how to describe it. Like, I was just completely devastated. I couldn't do anything. I just remember Morgan was right there with me. I was in so much anguish and pain, and the worst day of my life. Worst day of my life. Obviously at that moment I just wanted to be discharged. I wanted to get out of there. I just wanted to go to my mum's house and be with my family, and they had to give me all this medication because obviously they were scared that my blood pressure was going to go high again, and physically I was so unwell. And when you're hit with that kind of news and that kind of grief, like, it doesn't just have an effect on you emotionally, it's like physically I was in agony, not just from the operation but from the news. And they were so worried for me, and they were giving me all my blood thinners, injections and things like that, and I just going in one ear out the other. And obviously Morgan was taking all that on, and then we finally left the hospital and got to my mum's house, and I can't even explain what I did in that house. Like, my knees just gave out and I fell to the floor, and I was just weeping and weeping, and I was just crying out for him, and just was yearning to see him and to speak to him and just to be there with him. And it was just traumatic. My sister, my brother and my mum, and they were all there, and just Morgan, and I just remember they all ran over to me and just were holding me whilst I was literally falling apart in their arms, and they just held me. And obviously they were also going through their own grief, not just for their nephew and their grandson, but also for their dad and their husband, and for Morgan, for his son, his wife, and now his father-in-law. And it was just, oh my gosh. But yeah, we're a really close-knit family, and I just thank God that he held us together. But for me, something that was probably the most traumatic was the fact that I couldn't go to my own dad's funeral, and that was like a whole nother grief on its own. Like, the fact that I couldn't be there to bury my dad and to say goodbye to the man that I had known for 30 years. It's just, it's unbelievably painful, and I know that he knows why I couldn't be there. I know he knows how much I loved him. And I know how much he loved me. I'm grateful for the relationship we had, and yeah, like, we were just so close, and he was such a good dad. Like, I'm just grateful that he got to see me married, and he got to see me have kids, and as a mum. And he used to always say to me, oh, Samira, you're such a good mum, you're so hardworking. He just always used to say, Samira, you really try, you know, you really try. I don't know how to translate it exactly into English, but ubo uhumode, like he just used to always say like, yeah, you know, you get on with things, you like, oh, daddy man, just miss him so much. But just not being able to go to the funeral was heartbreaking. To be honest, when it first happened, I was like, I'm going to Ghana. I don't care about the health risks. I didn't care, like, you know, if I was going to put myself in danger, I just, like, I need to be there. Like, there's no way that I can stay here whilst my daddy's buried there. But obviously I wasn't fit to fly. I couldn't fly. They wouldn't allow me to. Like, Morgan said, that's not happening. My family were like, no, Samira, and they just said Daddy knows, he knows how much you love him, and he knows you would be there if you could, so don't worry. So I stayed here with my sister, and she made the decision to stay here with me, like knowing that I was the only child that wouldn't be able to go. And my sister, like, I know you can't choose your family, but I would choose my sister over and over again to be my sister, because she's just, she's just amazing. My mum, the way she held me and comforted me, like, my mum is such a strong woman, and I'm just thankful to God that he's kept her and that she's been able to be there for all her children whilst dealing with her own grief. She's an amazing, strong woman. I love her so much. And then my brothers, like, just feeling so protected by them, and just knowing that, you know, they've got me and my sister. Like, I'm just so grateful for my family. And then my in-laws, like mother-in-law, just took such good care of me and cooked for me and made sure that I had everything that I had, and really, like, spoke to me and connected with me. And my father-in-law, just like the way he held me on the day of Logan's funeral, like, just the way that my dad would. And my sister-in-law, same, like, just both of them just amazing, like sisters. I'm so grateful that I'm part of the Schofield family as well. The day that we buried Logan was just such a horrible, hard, difficult day. Very, very intimate, small funeral. You know, just family and a couple of close friends, and no parent should have to bury their child. It's just such a horrible thing to have to do. And, you know, just seeing that small, tiny coffin, it's just, it just didn't feel right. But yeah, it was just a beautiful little memorial, and a pastor and his wife came, and another of our pastors, and they prayed with us and they spoke words of life to us, and I was just so comforted, you know, as hard and as difficult as it was, you know, to bury my own baby. Horrible. But when you go through grief and this much pain, you have a decision to make, because you're thrown into this war zone of, like, fighting for your sanity, fighting for your family, I was fighting for Aiden and me, I was fighting for Morgan, I was fighting for my own life, just, you know, just fighting for normality, some sense of normality, and fighting for my faith, and fighting to believe everything that I know about God and about the goodness of God, and, you know, how he's there for the brokenhearted, and he's a comforter, and there's nothing that he will give you that you won't be able to bear. He only gives you things that he knows you can bear. And, you know, just trying not to listen to the lies of the enemy, like that this is a curse, or this happened to me because, you know, God allowed it to, and it's a punishment, or just the lies that the enemy will try to tell you, and just, you know, fighting for the truth of God and God's word. And I'm just so grateful that, you know, as much as I felt so weak and so low and so broken and so depressed and you know, I've never had to worry about my mental health, but I honestly was really worried for myself, and I think everyone around me was as well, that as much as I was holding it together, like I had days where I was just, I couldn't do anything, you know, I couldn't even pray, I couldn't talk to God, and then I would feel bad that I'm not being a good mom, but I was just so broken. And I think for anybody that is going through grief, like, grief is something that you kind of have to find the balance between moving forward with your life and also grieving at the same time. And I don't like to say moving on, because I don't think I ever will move on or get over the loss of my baby and the loss of my dad. I will always have that pain with me, you know. I've learned to kind of live with it. I've learned to accept the reality of what has happened. And, you know, since everything's happened, I have laughed, I have been happy again. I have, you know, I've had my birthday, I've had the kids' birthdays, we've had family times, you know, we've done things, we've gone out, especially over the summer holidays. I've met up with friends, and yes, I am still the same person in that sense, but I will forever be brokenhearted. I will forever miss my dad. I will forever, you know, wonder what could have been with my baby boy. Grief is something that it comes in waves. So even when you're feeling okay, it could take for the smallest thing, and then that deep wave of grief comes back. You could be, you know, hearing that person's voice, or just missing them, or a song that reminds you of them, or someone saying something, and it could just trigger it again, and all the emotions come back up. But what I've learned about grief is that you have to really go there with it. You know, you can't suppress it. It's not something that, if you believe in God, you can just pray away. You really have to let yourself feel all those different emotions, and there are a lot of different emotions that you will feel. Like for me, I initially felt the shock, and then that sadness, and then you feel fearful, you know, fearful that everything's going to go back to normal and everybody's going to forget about that person, or fearful that you're never going to be normal again, or, you know, just fearful that life just isn't the same and you're not going to make it through, and angry that it's happened to you, and, you know, depressed and low, and there's just so many different aspects of it. You just need to really allow yourself to feel each thing. And there is also something called grief relief, and it's a relief that maybe, you know, if you lose somebody that's in pain or something like that, that you feel relieved that they're no longer in pain, and you feel relieved that, you know, they're in a better place. And there's also a guilt that comes with grief, you know, that if you're feeling okay, you're having an okay day and you're happy, you can just catch yourself feeling guilty for feeling okay. And that's something that I really struggled with, you know. I just, you know, when everything first happened, I just kind of zoned out, and I deleted Instagram, I deleted Snapchat, and I just didn't want to talk about it. And, you know, but I just think there's no timeline to grief, there's no timeline to dealing with the process. Everybody's journey with grief is different, and I think, you know, for me, it took me 7 months to come back and, you know, talk about it. For some people it might take 7 weeks, for some people it might take 7 days, but you just have to do what feels right to you, and don't feel guilty when you have those days where you're up and you feel happy. And like for me, I don't care what my grief looks like to somebody. Like I don't care if, you know, someone sees me, you know, snapping or doing an Insta story or posting a picture, and they think, oh, didn't she just lose her dad? Didn't she just lose her baby? She's quite okay. And like, people need to remember that people show you what they want to show you. Like when I'm falling apart and having such a bad day of grief, I don't pick up the camera, I don't show that, you know. I show my strength, and I will continue to do that, because I think it's important to, because as long as you're dealing with things privately, properly, and not suppressing it, I think you should just let yourself feel happy again. It's okay to feel happy again. And I know that my dad would want me to continue with my life, and I know that, you know, he would want me to not be stuck in a rut of grief. I know he would want me to move forward. My dad was somebody who was fearless. That man was not scared of anything, and he was a real go-getter, and that is where, like, that is what I choose to focus on. Everything that he taught me, I want to be like that. And if I ever had a motivation to do things or to be something in life, or to value the people around me and to not take things for granted, it is most definitely now. My perspective is just that, you know what, there's a lot to be sad about, but there's also so much to be grateful for. I'm grateful for life, my life. I'm grateful that God saved my life. I'm grateful that my dad had a very long life and he lived to see his children and his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. I'm grateful that I still have another parent that's alive and well. I'm grateful that I have 2 beautiful children who are here with me. I'm grateful that I got to meet my beautiful, beautiful baby boy Logan. And I will never ever forget them, you know. I don't believe that it was a coincidence that their deaths were so close to each other. I do feel like there was a reason for that, and I know that God has a plan, and I just choose to be positive. I choose to focus on the good, and yes, there will always be a part of me that's broken, but you don't get to choose the cards that you're dealt in life, and the only thing you do have control over is how you respond to situations. And I know that because of God, I'm gonna be okay. And I'll forever miss my dad, and I'll forever mourn his loss, and I'll forever think about, you know, when Logan would have been 1, when he would have been 2, and, you know, I'll always imagine what his relationship would have been like with the kids, and what it would have been like to see him grow, you know. And I am also grateful for the fact that I can have more children if we choose to. But the sad thing is, you know, when you lose a child that you've seen physically, you don't just want another baby, you want that baby. And so, yeah, man, I'm grateful, but I have really faced that reality of what I went through, and I have learned through this that I am unbreakable, that I am resilient, that I am a strong black woman, and I know that God has got me. I'm sorry that this video is probably so long. Thank you so much for your love and support for my family over the last few months, and I pray that 2020 somehow gets better. And I am a strong believer that sometimes you need to go through the worst to experience the best. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on my next one.